starting shortly. I think we're waiting until we get the go-ahead. We're good? All right. Okay, well, welcome everyone to And Now Kiss, learning about intimacy from romancing, dating sims, and Otome games. So if you're looking to learn about romancing, about dating, intimacy, you are in the right place. So we're going to start. Well, first I want to give you a sense of what this panel will look like. We're going to go through questions. Each of us are going to talk. It's going to be conversational. And then at the end, we're going to have some Q&A. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is introduce ourselves so you know who we all are. My name is Celeste Sangiorgio. I'm a clinical psychologist. I study people's ideas of themselves and how that moves into different behaviors, so healthy and unhealthy behaviors, and how games could be used to teach people different skills, different things that they can believe about themselves that then they use in their daily lives. Why don't we start with Anthony?
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Ureña. I'm currently an assistant professor of sociology at Rutgers University, Newark. My area of expertise in particular is a focus on health inequality, but in my work so far, I also look at the role relationships play and how people navigate risk in everyday life.
My name is Dr. Jared Kilmer. I am a clinical psychologist and serve as the clinic director at a local clinic called Save Point Behavioral Health. Some of my training has focused on interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, and self-advocacy in relationships, so like assertiveness and boundary setting.
Hi, everyone. I am not Dr. Amelia Herbst, but I am filling in for her. My name is Hadil. I am a historian of childhood and girlhood, and while I'm not a therapist, one of the things that I have studied extensively is the impact that young women have on things like pop culture, and one of the things that I've been able to study extensively is the role that they have played in the popularity of things like romance games and Otome games.
I'm James Walter. I am a psychology student at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I am working on a dating sim to teach healthy relationship behaviors, specifically focusing on helping people with trauma learn how to trust again. And I am taking my personal experience of retroactively recognizing red flags in relationships and applying that to my work.
Great, and thank you everybody for attending this panel. We're going to jump in. I realize also, so James is my student. I'm a research faculty at Rochester Institute of Technology, so shout out to RIT too. All right, so we're going to jump right in with the first question. So the idea behind this question, and you'll see all the questions that we talk about displayed on the screen there for accessibility, but the idea behind this question is that based on the way that games are, that you're moving through a narrative, that different behaviors are reinforced, romance does tend to be shown as transactional, and there are a few examples of that on the board from different games. So I want to open it up to the panel about to talk through what the pros and the cons are of representing romance in this way.
I can chime in. In my work as an assistant professor, I am likely, professing, teaching courses, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't take some opportunity to share some concepts that I hope you can all leave with once you exit this room. But in sociology, we have this term coined by Viviana Zelizer called relational work, which is a simple way to say the things that we do to maintain the context, the shape, the trust, the actual nature of a bond. And so when I think about romance as a game mechanic and romancing games in particular, we know how gift giving is a big thing, right? We increase our affinity with a particular character that we love. We see that in games like Baldur's Gate, Fire Emblem, all of that, right? And so when we give these gifts, the affinity points go up, and then hopefully we unlock a deeper bond with that person. In many ways, this is sort of emulating how relationships work in real life, albeit not with the full complexity, right? Because if there's someone that you care about, you buy a gift for them, whether it's romantic or otherwise. But we do want to be mindful that in real life, we don't have an affinity bar that we can sort of like tap a person and just see these points like, oh, Celeste, I bought her a Christmas present, so now plus 10 points, I wish, right? So we want to be mindful that when we're navigating the real world, it isn't so black and white in that way. But I think it's a cool and fun motivating factor for that to exist in games.
Yeah. To jump off of that, I think one of the bad things about it is it can help reinforce the idea that if you do something for someone, you are owed something back, because when you do that and you get that plus 10 points, they usually show you something, and that can reinforce the bad behavior that some people take as an approach to dating. So that's, I think, a negative.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because to a certain extent, and I think this is what you were getting at, Anthony, relationships do have a transactional component, and games are an approximation, right, of things, right? Art is an imitation of life. And I think it's important to be careful about how these things are presented in games. I really like the idea of like approval and disapproval in games, right? So sometimes, when you give someone something, an idea behind it could be that you're reflecting what you've noticed about them, right? I've noticed that this is something that you value, and I've taken the time to find something of value to you and then give it to you, right? And so if a game has a way of like showing a disapproval of that, like you're not reflecting this accurately, or like this is something that's painful to me or so forth, then that can kind of introduce some nuance there. Yeah, I'm also thinking of some concepts in social psychology. I know there's a measure of instrumental support, which is, it's like you just ask people when you're doing a study, like, how many people can you think of that you can just go and ask for like $20 and they'll give it to you, like no questions asked. So that is how it's like captured, right? How that idea of social support is captured. Yeah, it reminds me of disclosure reciprocity too, right? This idea that if you disclose something to someone, they'll disclose something back, right? So there are these social ideas that are being represented in games.
I think that it shows that you have to make an investment in the people, so that's a good side of it. It's not just about you and how you're feeling. You have to put something into it in order to help it grow. So that's the good side of transactional, but.
And I want to open it up to you guys too.
I think we're talking about like two sides of the same coin in terms of the pros and cons, because relationships are inherently transactional. To represent them in a video game, we have to be oversimplifying what a relationship truly is. It's almost a caricature just to be able to track it. In reality, it's far more complex. But like, at its best, the pros of a transactional experience in relationships is two people with different goals working towards the same shared outcome, whether that is going on a journey to save the world or run a household. But the cons can very easily manifest. I gave you a dozen quarts, why don't you love me yet? Is a fair question and also a ridiculous one simultaneously.
Now, I know that this doesn't quite count as a romance game, but kind of one of the more positive things that we've talked about is having to not just give somebody 12 quarts for love, but I find that The Sims, which is one of my favorite games, has like the whole traits system. So the way that you interact with certain Sims is different based on their kind of traits. And I think that makes it feel less transactional. So you can't just give somebody 12 quarts. You have to like tell them a joke because they're like the jokester trait. And I think that can be a good thing, especially if you're younger and learning how these romantic relationships work, is like, oh, it's not just about giving gifts. I have to find out about this person more. What do they like? What do they don't like? Because I feel like The Sims is really punishing if you do something that one of them doesn't like. Nothing is like scarier to me than seeing those like double minus. I'm like, I can never talk to this Sim again. I have to, I'm
Yeah, it's
moving.
painful, right?
I'm moving to San Myshuno Valley.
It's interesting too. I feel like sometimes you get like this person disapproved, and you're like, well, I don't like work. I don't like you
dead to
anymore.
me.
Yeah. But I think like what I'm hearing here is that these are approximations that I feel like can become very like simple to a certain extent, but if they're in a simple place, they can be accessible and then scaffold into something that's like very complex, right? To the point that you're like, the way it becomes transactional is that you're each investing in something that you're moving forward together. So that's fun. I like that a lot. Anything you guys want to add? I feel great about that conversation. Let's move into the next question. All right. So, this question gets at how romance fits into the narrative. So based on how kind of games traditionally move forward, you're often seeing a character as they go through something. So they might be starting a new relationship through the course of you embodying them. They might be just recently having ended a relationship. So thinking across all the examples that you can think of, and how romance is represented in games, what are these representations teaching us about romance in our own lives? I know that's a big one. I'll step back and let guys decide who wants to take it.
I think that question is inherently broad and very overwhelming if you ask it vaguely, but if you start looking at any individual portrayal of a romantic relationship, something that we can learn comes out. When I was thinking about this question in advance, I thought about Cody and May from It Takes Two. And that was an interesting snapshot in their life because we're not seeing a relationship develop and blossom. We're seeing the end of one. And apology for spoilers, but it's that whole game is about two people who are planning to get divorced rediscovering each other and what they originally loved about each other. And what that story teaches me is how important it is to periodically check in with anybody you're in a relationship with. My partner and I learned everything about each other when we first met, and 5 years into our relationship, some of that information was expired. And if we just continued to move forward with that outdated information, I think we would continuously drift apart as we became more ourselves. And so constantly checking in, maintaining shared experiences, going through trials together is a lot of what that particular relationship taught me.
What a wonderful answer.
So my whole thesis for what I'm studying is that we can start using games for patient therapy because the stories that we imbibe change us. And, you know, we've all read a book or watched a movie that really touched us and made us think differently about ourselves and the world. So how much more impactful is that going to be when we're actually participating in the story? And to demonstrate this, I have a little anecdote. Romance games can change the way that we think about relationships. So during the pandemic, I played Stardew Valley for the first time. And we all know, well, I hope we all have heard of Stardew Valley to some extent, I'm sure. And we know that romance is a big part of this. And when I was playing Stardew Valley for the first time, I started romancing Shane because I believed that if I could fix this man, everything would be right in the world. So we went all the way, we got married, and Shane moved in. And sorry if this is spoiling it for anybody, but Shane moves in and he turns his little room into a disgusting frat boy nightmare. There's muddy footprints on the floor, beer cans everywhere. All the progress he made with giving up drinking is gone. And we're married, and like a week into it, I go, absolutely not. This is not working. I need out. And I divorced him. And through the process of looking at my fictional relationship in this game, I started looking at my actual relationship in real life. And I realized that after 6 years, I wasn't happy there either. And taking the time to look at this fake relationship gave me the tools I needed to look at my real relationship and realize that I had to make a change there too. And it sucked, but we're both better off now. And I don't know if I would have gotten to that point without having this romance game teach me that I can look at these things there too. So if that game can change the trajectory of my life, why can't we do that everywhere?
I'm going to piggyback off of that just a little bit. First, I'm sorry you couldn't fix Shane. That is really hard.
It was the chickens. Like, he raises chickens, so he has a heart, right? Like,
Sometimes it's just not enough, babe. The chickens just isn't enough.
yeah.
But kind of piggybacking off of that, and again, I'm going to bring up The Sims, but like, I was kind of in a similar spot many moons ago where like The Sims was like my comfort game, and I started to notice a pattern of my behavior in playing this game is like anybody that I would want to romance, basically what I was doing is I was treating this other Sim the way that I wanted to be treated. Oh, yeah. So like I was having the time of my life because I was getting that treatment from myself, if that makes sense. But being able to see the not, I don't want to use the word intimate, but like those gestures or how I would want to receive them, it made me go, oh, maybe I am spending 10 hours doing this a day because there's something lacking, and maybe I should find somebody who will treat me this way, because if I can do it in the video game, you can do it in real life, okay? But I think that was like a big learning experience, is like being able to kind of like test the waters of what love is supposed to feel like in like a safe environment in my little computer. I couldn't fix Astarion either. I'm sorry. I tried.
I think, so we can think about the rom-com we all love to watch now and again, or a fun, cheesy romance novel, right? Where we're reading, we're engaging with these films, with these forms of media to sort of get that fairy tale happy ending that we're looking for. But I think video games in particular have this very distinct power to afford us a clearer view of the complexity of what it's like to actually engage in a relationship with someone else, even if it's just with a character that was coded on the screen, right? So in this moment, I'm thinking about specifically Baldur's Gate 3. I'm sure there are many people here who love that game, and how there are different people who you can actually romance. And there are folks that you come across and you're expecting them to play out one way, but then as you're engaging in the relationship with them, they reveal themselves to have their own motivations, their own complexities that might not actually jive with you down the road. So for me personally, when I started Baldur's Gate, I know for some reason a lot of people didn't love him, but I'm a big Gale fan, right? And I'm very happy we got that reaction here. We did this at PAX East too, and it was a similar applause, so thank you. But he was a very complicated character for me in a way I hadn't anticipated, because I'm always drawn to the magicians, the people who can alchemize the things in their lives, right? But there's a certain point in the game, and I won't spoil anything, but Gale presents himself in a certain way at first, and then as the plot moves along, he presents to you a particular proposition that is disastrous, to say the least, right? And so when you're deeply in this bond with this character and you're having your private one-on-one conversations, he makes it clear that he wants to do something. And for me, I did not want to do the thing that he wanted to do, which was very destructive. And when I said no, I thought, having seen so many rom-coms, having read so many romance novels, I thought that he would respond with a sort of sycophantic, apologetic tone, like, oh, I'm so sorry to upset you, I would never do that. But he stood firmly on his ground and said, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And if you don't accept it, then I guess we can't be together. And that was shocking because like, wait, I'm the person in control here. I'm the one with the controller. If I'm going to break up with somebody, it's going to be me saying, no, I don't want you anymore, right? So I remember just putting the controller down and being shocked and grateful that the developers, the writers on this team for Baldur's Gate thought so concretely about how people themselves don't always react in ways that you anticipate, in ways that you want them to, and that's actually healthy. Because this is how you see when you're navigating the real world, this is a lesson that you can pull out from that game, is that sometimes you grow apart, and that's okay. Sometimes a relationship is meant to last till the end of time, till death do us part. Sometimes it's just for the summer, which is a fun book you should read. But all this to say, bringing it back to some sociological terms, there is a concept called conscious uncoupling. I'm sure you've heard that in popular media elsewhere, but it's this idea that when people are in a relationship for some time, there's this sort of internal, private resignation and awareness of the fact that things might not be working out. And then that eventually evolves into a conversation that's had between partners that then becomes public, where an established union, a marriage, for example, we can look at celebrity couples, all of a sudden they break up and it becomes public knowledge. But that doesn't just happen overnight and day, it's an ongoing process. And so I think video games really have the capacity to expose to us what that might be like in a way that's safe and accessible so that, you know, we all don't want our hearts broken, ideally, but it happens. But a game can sort of preemptively prepare you for that potential future.
Oh, yeah, that was such a good point. I didn't think about, I think what you tapped into was that there is a power dynamic, right, within games with the player-controlled character that you would assume would have the majority of the power and autonomy in the game. And I think what I noticed across all of the responses is that there are so many different representations from the life sims that you guys were talking about to the tighter narrative, right, with It Takes Two, to Baldur's Gate, which is more like flexible, and I appreciate Anthony's not spoiling it for me since I haven't played it yet. I don't know if there's any other patient gamers out here, but yeah, so I haven't played it yet. But there are so many different pathways that as you engage with the games, you will find something that resonates with you or very much so does not. So it can reflect something to you. And I know, when we talked about this in the past, I said I don't want to think about it too much because a trend that I have with dating sims and romance games is that I often pick the character that's secretly a terrorist, which I don't know if I want to, so I'll tell you what games it was. So Dragon Age, I was a Teenaged Exocolonist, Fire Emblem, and then, depending on how you think about it, Mass Effect, and Code Realize, with, was it Hidden Strength? Which is, I was actually thinking about those, tighter, Otome games when I wrote this question initially, these games where you enter into it with a character who has so many different things in their lives that are going poorly, and then through the romance, the things in their lives kind of come together as the romance is moving forward. So Code Realize, PO4A, these type of Otome games tend to have that plot. And when I was thinking about this question, I was like, maybe that's not the healthiest, but I actually think it might be fine because for some people, they see different things in their lives in different ways as they move through a romance, right? They learn things with other people, and I think that everyone's answers kind of tap into that, what they noticed about themselves. And as I said, I'm not going to reflect too much about the pattern I've noticed about myself. So I'm going to jump into the next one.
Before we do,
yeah, sorry.
I just want to piggyback and say one thing I'm noticing about what these representations are teaching us from video games broadly and not in specific anymore is what does a healthy relationship actually look like? There's a lot of permutations for healthy and unhealthy relationships, but I think most of us spend a lot of our early years trying to figure that out. Our parents are not all universally good blueprints for a healthy relationship. And so to have multiple examples of how these relationships can play out, which ones resonate with you, what do you actually need? It's hard to put your finger on, but more data is always better.
Yeah, and especially that embodying, like that social learning. Sorry,
Yeah.
James.
No, I was going to say, I think it's also important to recognize the fact that there is no one set of rules. What is healthy for one relationship may be unhealthy for another, and vice versa. Like, two people who are very good with communication can start talking about deeper things way more quickly than somebody who is more avoidant. So,
Yeah, it's true. I think Catherine has an ending that shows that one way of ending the game is that people can make each other worse, and that's the goal for some relationships. So I'm going to move past this one. I feel like we got to it already, particularly healthy or unhealthy examples, unless anyone wants to jump in or... Nah? All right, let's move forward. So this, when I was putting this together, I went on Reddit and a few different places, and I asked people for questions that they wanted us to cover, and this was one of them that was submitted. So the idea behind this is that people can get, or it can get fairly contentious when people are talking about who they romanced. There's this pressure, maybe sometimes, to determine which was the right answer or which was the right relationship to pursue. So this is just going to open. I want to open it up to the group to talk about what might be motivating this, what might be happening to kind of create the intensity behind these emotions, and how to manage it when it comes up.
I'll go first. So a lot of what I study, especially around girlhood in general, is for things like Otome games and romance games, or games that have a romance component for a lot of these young women. And when I say young women, I mean like 13 to 18, so still actual minors. They're experiencing romance for the first time. And so for them, it's like this very intense experience that seems, from what I have been told and have studied, it's so easily dismissed and so easily belittled, especially by people they share these communities with. The online space can be very tumultuous in general, but for a lot of people, especially in communities, I'll use Tumblr as an example just because that's where I hang out these days. But there's really no way of knowing who you're interacting with, like how old they are, what their general life experience is. So I find that the discussions can be intense, to put it really lightly. But I think when you are experiencing these emotions for the very first time, there's already, one, the newness and the novelty of it. That is a lot. And then you have to remember where mentally and developmentally actual children are. They're not going to be on the same playing field, so to speak, as a fully formed adult who has life experience. So I think that definitely contributes to the toxicity, is just that lack of understanding and the intensity of the newness of these feelings, at least in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's hard to know who you're interacting with, right? And I think one of the things I wanted to talk about with this too is there's this concept. It's called post-decision rationalization. Where when someone makes a decision, a personal decision, it's a natural, healthy process to denigrate the other options. So, for example, if you decided to study or major in art, right, instead of psychology, you might say I have more time to listen to podcasts while I'm drawing or something like that. You look at the pros of the decision and you feel better about it, right? And so when you choose a romance option, it's possible that you're doing the same thing, right? I use Mass Effect as an example here. You might find in like playthroughs that you really connect to the first decision you made because your body or your mind is already doing that natural process of denigrating the other options. I think games are so unique in that they're personal because you move through them, you have a lot of processing and thoughts as you're moving through them, but they're also universal because everyone's moving through the same like plot, right? So they're at once like deeply personal in the experience that you had, but also shared. And so it's that post-decisional rationalization is getting activated, but then it's butting up against other people's decisions. That makes sense. What do you guys think?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, so in my mind, video games in general, yeah, especially dating sims, but they are sort of a mirror of how the real world works, the society that we exist within. And something that's distinct about when you're playing a dating sim, a game like Baldur's Gate even, or Cyberpunk, and you're making these sort of decisions about who you're choosing to deepen your virtual bonds with, I guess. At first, this is a unique experience because it's wholly private until you tell someone about who you chose to romance, or until you went on that Reddit page or a message board somewhere and decided to say, so what are your thoughts on X, Y, Z, right? But in many ways, this reflects how relationships themselves, the ones that we have in real life with our loved ones, our romantic partners, our intimate partners, we tend to think of them as wholly private affairs, but as they develop and become known to others, they are also at the whims of others' expectations, their judgments. And so in some ways, this is a contained way of navigating that contention that might arise. Like, why would you choose to date Gail, for example, when Lae'zel is right there, or Karlach, who, all of these options. It starts this fun debate that, for me, is just a testament to good character development and writing, but in a more meaningful way when we're thinking about what happens when we turn the game off and we're engaging with one another on the street. It's also cluing us into the fact that, wow, who I choose to create a life with, who I choose to engage with in a certain way is not just between me and those individuals, but it's also what are other people thinking about us? Will we be accepted in a certain way? Will we be viewed because of this or that other reason, right? So that adds a little bit more of the reality component that takes us out of the game and out into the street.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I concur.
Sorry, I looked at you like really violently, like.
Yeah, and I think I realized, and I think that this is what I see across the answers, is that it's an emotional experience, right? You're going through the processing, the thinking, and so it's natural to have an emotional reaction to an emotional experience. But the ways that that emotional experience or the ways that that reaction happens can be like healthy or unhealthy, right? And I think that this question gets at that a little bit as well. Like, what are the boundaries that are being set around how people have these conversations? Because it is personal and it makes sense to get like heated or activated about it, but what happens after? Like, how does that conversation move itself forward?
Yeah. I think that taps into my whole thing earlier about how the stories we imbibe change us, and if we're this passionate about Star Wars, when you're engaging in the material, you're going to feel even more strongly about it. And I think when it comes to terms of romance, if somebody doesn't agree with the choice that you made to romance someone in the game, it's going to feel like a personal attack, like you don't respect the choices I make about love, and you're going to feel attacked and react even more strongly, I think.
Well, yeah, I think if you go into like some subreddits in some areas, people will be like, I don't respect your choice, right? Like that is the exact language that's being used. And I guess, I think, when it comes to romancing and dating sims and stuff, it's almost like it's a shared like culture or cultural experience, right? Like if you like chose Garrus or something, you have experienced that like plot line, and that's something you can talk to people about and stuff. And so I think opening up the conversation around like the game itself, what parts of the game you experienced, kind of like refocusing on the shared parts rather than like the contentiousness of the emotional reaction can be healthy. Anything you guys want to add before we move on to the next question? All right, let's do it. Okay. So we've gone over the different ways that romance is represented, right? We've talked about everything from, again, like the super tight narratives to the like AAA games, Otome games. What are other ways? Like, what are other things that you would like to see represented? What are other mechanics, right? So what I highlighted here, it's the date from Undertale. I think that that's a very fun representation of romance. This is, the next one is from, I think, The World Next Door. They have a booth downstairs. They're wonderful. They actually gave us pins, too, if anyone wants them after. And the next one's a tarot game, which is called, what's the name of that game again?
The Cosmic...
The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood.
Yes.
And then Dream Daddy, right, which has a puzzle in every date. And so these are all different representations. So what would you like to see more of, or what isn't represented that you'd like to see?
For me, I think a lot about the ways that we define intimacy and relationship building, especially within a romantic context, to be all about physical things, right? We're thinking about gift giving, we're thinking about the initiation of displays of affection and all of that, right? But there are other parts, there are other kinds of intimacy that I don't think are fully represented or rewarded in the same way that I would love to see in a dating sim or a game that involves dating mechanics. So I think about the wonder of just sitting silently with someone that you care about and just having that mean something, right? It's something that you can do yourself if you're playing The Sims, right? Or even with Animal Crossing, you choose to go visit your favorite person, you visit your friends through the online functionality, right? But you don't get points for that. It doesn't move the relationship along. Things like hand-holding, sharing secrets, conversations, all of that. And this gets to my larger point, too, that when we're thinking about intimacy, we also want to make sure that it's not solely relegated to the realm of somebody I want to call my husband, my wife, my life partner, right? The intimacy exists also within friendships, within other bonds that don't necessarily involve sex or love or kissing, right? And so I think it'd be really revolutionary to see a game that, number one, allows for that diverse view on what intimacy can truly be, because sometimes it's more than just buying flowers, right? It's that quiet walk that you take along the beach and then the memories you have of that moment shared.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'd like to go next because my answer kind of has some overlap before we get too far away from it. But like I really like these quiet moments of support in everyday life and relationships. I feel like all the time in media, we're looking at grand acts and moments of passion, which is fantastic, but like the things I think I cherish most in my own relationship, and that's probably why I like seeing it reflected, are these moments of support. When I think of my favorite example, it's Osiris and Saint 14 from Destiny. They're such a beautiful couple, and like I want to read short snippets of Saint bringing Osiris a cup of tea. I want to hear acknowledgments of people's insecurities and hopes and fears. I don't have a way to end that statement, but that's what I cherish most. I want to see more of it.
You just said the end, and
Yeah.
then I just want to bring up Destiny because I love that game. One, I love how that is written for Osiris and Saint 14, even if Osiris was really mean to me in Lightfall, and that's fine. It's whatever. But kind of in the same vein, I really liked the interactions between the Drifter and Eris Morn. My scrunklies, my blorbos, but she's so traumatized, and Drifter just does not give a shit. Like he's just so himself. He doesn't try to be a different person to get through to her. He is just himself the entire time. Even if himself is very annoying, that's fine. She seems to respond to that really well. But it's just like it's just this beautiful, respectful almost playful banter that they eventually get to. No spoilers or anything, but it's just, I loved the progression of that because there are no grand gestures. It starts with like little jokes that he tries to get her to laugh, and then he eventually gets her to like open up and do something very vulnerable and like giving her nicknames. It's just those little tiny things, and I just want to pick them up and shove them in my mouth. Like, I have such cuteness aggression for how that is written.
We need a whole lot more non-heteronormativity. We need representation that bisexual people with opposite sex partners are still queer. We need more representation of all the letters past Q, you know? Ace people, arrow people, they can date. Demisexual people need representation. We need better non-binary representation. Intersex people, like it doesn't stop. And we need it in a way that isn't just, here's the token one, you know, that is, here's the most reduced stereotype you can think of. Like, we need real examples of real people and real relationships, because that is how we are going to learn about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you know, you're talking about like the different representations that we need to weave into these narratives that we already see, right? And I think also, right, it's funny, I feel like it's on both sides, right? And then I think what you guys were talking about, right, those small moments of intimacy after a relationship is formed is so important too. I think about this all. I would love to play a game that starts with a character in a couple and just continue, right? Like continues past that. If it was a romance game, it might be cultivating that relationship in different directions. What version of yourself do you want to become with this person, and what version of themselves do you want to reflect back to them, and how are they going to respond to that and grow from that, right?
I also one day want to make a breakup simulator that teaches
Yes.
people how to break up in a healthy way.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
please.
Yeah, and I was thinking what Anthony was talking about too before, that having a character like break up with you or give you like that negative feedback is so important for learning. And yeah, I know we started right talking about those transactional interactions. One of the reasons I put these guys on the board is because I think it's so useful to have different types of romantic and intimate interactions, right? I think I remember reading that in the initial like Final Fantasy VII, there was some code in the back for like when you like cured people or gave them a potion or like defended them or something like that. But some other way of showing support other than that instrumental, maybe it's how you solve a puzzle together or something like that is what moves the relationship forward. All right, anything you guys want to add before we move? Okay. All right. This is what happened last time. I feel like we're getting low on time. The idea behind this question was often romance is seen as like genre bound, right? You have romance, and then once something gets to a certain level of sophistication, it's no longer seen as romance, right? So I think The Hunger Games is a really good example of this. I think one of the things I look for to determine if something is romance is there an epilogue that like shows the couple happy at the end? And so Hunger Games fits that. And so I was wondering if like romance is in like a pulp area of games or moving out of that, or what you guys think about that. I guess we can, if anyone has thoughts, we can.
I have so many thoughts.
Okay, I know. Right? Oh yeah, but the pop culture.
Oh my
of course.
God, I have so many thoughts.
I also think a lot
people are
about
so
this.
disrespectful about romance.
Right?
It's ridiculous. It's so tired, I think, and it's so gendered.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of ageism in it as well, a lot of like heteronormativity as well. There's just so much nonsense, and I take it so personally. But I will bang my drum that romance can stand on its own and be its own genre, and it's a completely valid use of your time. I cannot tell you how many people I have looked up to who will immediately like disparage romance, and I get so mad. Because I think there is something special about consuming media that revolves around this very intimate and vulnerable and private part of you as a person. I also think that for many people, and I'll include myself, like I can only speak for myself, but I found romance, and when I say romance, I mean romance, not necessarily erotica, though that's fine too. Good shit. But I think for romance, growing up in a very religious household, in a very religious area of the southern United States, there was a lot of romance media that for me, it was not just entertainment, it was didactic. Which means like you learn from it. I didn't know that you could be bisexual. I didn't know that that was a thing until I read some fan fiction. I didn't know that how I was supposed to, like how I could expect to be treated, because my parents treat each other well, but for them, it's very private. It's almost like a business transaction on the face of it, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who relate to that. So like the big gestures, like the lovey-dovey stuff, I had to find on my own, and I found it through the romance genre, and kind of, I don't know, I get so mad when people are like, no, romance is for girls. I'm like, well, girls are great, first of all, and yes, but it's also for everybody, and it can be for you. There is a romance something or other out there for literally everybody in this room. I know that there is. I will help you find it.
And I think people are often like surprised. The reason I put these examples on the board, right, is that like in Bust of Fellows, you're like solving a crime while you're like doing your romance, and there's like body swapping, there's like all this stuff in it, right? And in Cupid Parasite, you're like the reincarnation of like the god of love, and also Alexander the Great's in there at a certain point. It's all like, it's so good. And people are often like surprised that these plots are, they see romance and immediately like reduce it. And so, yeah, and I'm right there with you.
Get so mad.
Yeah.
Go.
Does anyone, I just want to open it up just in case. Yeah. Oh. Nah? All right.
Well, I'm stuck on this idea that like an epilogue is a sign of romance. And I realized, oh, Fire Emblem's a romance game.
Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm playing Matchmaker all the time, and it's really fun in that to build a relationship between two of my units, they have to have shared experiences and engage in conversations over and over and over again until they like naturally get to know each other. And then for better or worse, after the credits roll, I get to see what happened. And that's the most satisfying part of that game to me.
Yeah, yeah. I agree, right? That idea really helps with thinking about what's romance and what isn't. Anyone else want to add to? Okay, so our next section is, I believe, is it a dating sim? So we're going to go through different games, and we're going to decide if they're a dating sim or not. The audience can also engage in this, if you'd like. All right, so let's do our first one. Is it a dating sim?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. There's no other answer.
I only know one person playing Baldur's Gate for the actual campaign. Everyone else is playing it.
Are they a QA person at Larian, or?
And they have to for their job. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so it seems like everyone's agreed. This is also test-retest reliability. This is the second time we've done this, and it had the exact same response. Yeah. So, all right, next one. Is it a dating sim? Final Fantasy VII. No. All right, good.
I mean, when we think about the original, right? So you do have some choice. Do you want Aerith, Tifa? How does that work out? So there's some options. Right? Yeah, but me too. Yeah, Barrett would be great. Yeah,
you can go on the date with him, right?
Yeah, you have to try real hard.
Good. I put this one in because I thought we'd get mixed responses. So seems like a question mark. What do you guys think? Question mark? No?
I'm thinking no.
Okay. We're leaning towards no on this one. All right. Is it a dating sim?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I've never played this game, but I just know.
I know. I feel like I used it as an example a bunch of times too in this.
I think if you have a character that has like a very popular body pillow, then yes. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think they officially sell it, right?
They do.
Yeah. Yeah. God bless.
If it's in the web shop, then yes.
All right. So again, that's 2 for 2. It's a dating sim. All right. Is it a dating sim? No. Good.
No.
All right. Same. This one has a little bit of consider how often people ask about your marriage status. Too often. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, isn't he a little kid?
Yeah. I don't know, man. The 90s. All right.
Wild times, yeah.
All right, next one. Is it a dating sim?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I still think about Dorian to this day, so.
I still think about talking to Vivienne and trying to proposition her and the way she laughed at me.
I didn't know you weren't supposed to like the elf that's shaped like an egg. I didn't know that. But everybody was like, you can't like him. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Good. Next one. Is it a dating sim?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right? It's complicated. I have a chapter on the romance in this game, if you're interested in it. All right. Is it a dating sim?
Last time, however, I did want to put on the table the fact that there are certain mods you can download to make it a dating sim, you know? But
Yeah, well, there's also a mod to make the dragon look like Macho Man Randy Savage.
exactly, yeah. So, it can be whatever you
go
want it to be.
That would be amazing.
You can date the dragon. I know that there was a panel in the past where someone said that they went and treated this game like The Bachelor, where they went to each
Amazing.
like marryable option and like interviewed them. So for that person, it very much so was a dating sim.
Anything can be a dating sim if you try hard and believe in yourself.
Again, what are you embodying? I think that might be our last one. Yeah. This slide is, well, I'll let you talk about it, James.
So I mentioned earlier how I'm working on a game, and it's a dating sim. It is specifically a slasher movie dating sim with the idea that people with trauma need to learn how to trust again. So this is heavily inspired by Scream. You've already lived through this once. You are the final girl.
Yay!
And you're learning how to trust people again when it all starts up. So we have some concept art here of two of the dateable characters, Kalina and Asher. Concept art of our masked killer.
So scary.
Giant heart mascot, because of course you're going to college in a town called Hartsville that has their own Valentine's Festival. We've got a whole team behind us. Brianna Brott did Kalina, Benny Williams did Asher, Ray Lindsay made our killer. We have Aidan Hatfield, who's working on 3D environments. Kate Sekar is designing our tarot deck for the game. Ethan White's our coder. And Celeste's.
Oh, we're also pulling data on this, and we're actually measuring if it impacts people's skills in different areas related to relationship behaviors. And if you want to participate in that, you can. That QR code leads to a sign-in sheet, and we are compensating people for participation. So you can enter a lottery, but you don't have to if you don't want to share your information. So thank you so much. Oh, sorry, James.
Sorry, there's also a link to our game studio
Yeah, that's right.
where you can sign up for more information, email blasts as the game develops.
But I also want to open it up for questions. So if anyone wants to ask us any questions, you can come up and we can talk. We'll also be around after too, or at least I will. So yeah, I think we have a mic
Yeah, we got
here
two mics
and
over
there.
here. You can walk up to the mics as well, and then you can just line
Oh, I
up.
appreciate you raising your hand. That was really nice.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so we can start on the left side.
Yeah, then we'll move on.
Hi. I was wondering if you guys would like to speak on some of the dating sims out there that do kind of promote unhealthy behavior. For example, like I've got two at the top of my head. First one, Mystic Messenger.
Oh no.
I've not played that. Oh no.
I'm sorry for triggering people about Mystic Messenger. Another one, which is a deep cut for me, was Asagao Academy. I don't even know if anyone knows that one.
Yeah. Oh no.
For those who do not know, Asagao Academy is where the YouTube group Normal Boots is in a high school and you get to date them. So obviously there's a lot of parasocial
Oh wow. Yeah.
things that come from there. And I was wondering if you guys would like to...
That game is a mess. It should have never been made. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I agree.
I get they were trying to capitalize on like what happened with Dream Daddy, which is a great game, but I think it was approached in a less than favorable way. We'll just leave it there.
I feel like when I think of, I know I mentioned this before, but when I think about romance, I think about it as like pulp, especially like specifically romance games. And pulp as a genre, I feel like is an area where people can explore things and learn things about themselves, but it also can be like quite unsafe or unhealthy in its representation sometimes. And I think it's I think it's just the dangers of pulp media. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the answer is just we need more and we need better.
Yeah.
Like, just do better.
Yeah.
And so let's make the games that are better.
Yeah, and I agree, James. And I think it's also, I know we talked about the like more intense parts of the fan communities, but I'm really so happy about there being online communities where people can talk about these things and be like, wait a second, like this was not like, I'm not comfortable with this, right?
Yeah.
And then that can start a dialogue about why it's unhealthy and what to do in those cases.
Exactly. I was going to say that as well, too. That for as many terrible things that have come into the world, we needed them to exist in order to understand why they maybe weren't so sweet to have around. And so we can use that as a launching point to move in a healthier direction.
All right, should we take the next?
Hello.
Hey.
I have two, but I'm just going to do one for time. I'll ask the second one outside. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name on the far, yes.
James.
Hi, James.
Hi.
When you mentioned that you were looking into games that have like more, not only diverse like characters in regards to like ace people, but also in regards to just relationship setups for like to teach characters or players about rejection. I had a recommendation for
Yes.
you.
Great.
There's a game that I found called It's Not Your Fault, I Just Don't Like You. And it's a visual novel where not all the characters want to date you. And so they sort of put you in positions where you have to sort of process being rejected. And I think it would be
Wonderful.
That's
yeah,
great.
really good. And the second one is I found is just called I Just Want to Be Single, where it is a traditional visual novel tropes and everything, but the main character and player character is Ace. So you have to sort of navigate all these people who want to be into you, and you're just like, no.
Oh, wow.
Dream scenario. Just
Already
want people to be
written down.
obsessed with me.
Thank you.
Gotcha. No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have somebody over here.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Hello. I don't play a lot of games right now because I'm very busy. But when I do, I like to play it with either my mom or like my partner because gotta get the homies involved. But my question is, obviously I want to like look for more like healthy like relationship things like that, like influence like my current relationship. So I was wondering if you have any like games you'd recommend like playing that would be like I could play with them and be like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I know this like sounds like a total nothing burger, but my mom and I really like playing Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
It's a game where you're basically forced to be nice, except for some of my villagers are actually really rude, and I get really mad when they're mean to my mom. But I think Animal Crossing or party games too. I know they're not really romance games, but You could also try World of Warcraft. Not again, not not a romance game, but it's so collaborative, and you have like a common mission that I feel like it's probably it would be fine. I play it with my husband, and we're not divorced yet, so it must be working.
My husband and I play a lot of dating sims together.
My husband will not play Destiny with me anymore because I get really mean. But World of Warcraft, and we're still together, so.
This may be less for your mom and more for your partner, but there's a board game out there called Fog of Love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is, it's a board game. It's a 2-player game where you are navigating a relationship.
That's literally, wait, one more time.
Fog of Love.
Fog of Love.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
actually
paranormal pack,
And I
too.
actually saw somebody downstairs selling it, one of the booths.
Okay, I'm gonna go look.
Run, don't walk.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you.
I really like Catherine, the original, and you can, I think it has part of the things that you like to do in a group. You're like texting, and you're like responding to text messages, and you can either drive this guy's life into the ground or like help him be a better person.
Responding to text messages is how I know it's a game and not real life.
And I remember, it's fun. We enjoyed it.
You said it was Catherine?
Yeah, Catherine, the original. Yeah.
Okay, I remember that. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
I think the light is red. I think we can't, unless.
See, if you could put your hand over it, it's not.
We'll be out front, though.
Yeah, we'll be out.
We'll be out front.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for
right,
coming.
thank you,
today.
everybody.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.